Hi, Nick. It's so nice to see you here. How are you
Hello, thanks for
doing?
having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. And Nick, this is our first conversation like face to face, but we've been in touch several times in the past. And I just decided like, why not to have you as a guest on my channel to talk to you about recovery process, particularly insomnia recovery, because that's what I'm kind of like specializing in. And I know that you in your activity you cover that particular experience as well.
Of
But
course.
for anyone who doesn't know you, would you like to just say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Nick. I was born and raised from New Jersey. Um, I I had no idea how mental health really operated until my mid 20s. I always knew that I had something wrong with me, um, but it never hit me until chronic OCD became my entire life in my mid to late 20s. Even before it became chronic, I knew something was wrong because I was doing so many rituals that I thought were odd. For me, primarily, I had all sorts of hyper awarenesses. So, as you know, we call them the big five: blinking, breathing, swallowing, saliva, heartbeat. But I had IBS problems, I had blurry vision problems, TPDR, and and then basically my largest one was fear of rejection with body dysmorphia specifically. But inside of all of that, I didn't sleep basically ever. Most people with chronic OCD don't really sleep well or anxiety. And then, I was in the. It's wild how it works, right? There's so many different presentations. My life seemed normal, and then 6 months later, I was in the mental hospital. And I remember laying in the mental hospital in the intake room, which they had to keep me in for 30 hours before they even put me into the mental hospital, which was a wild experience. I don't speak about that a lot. So it was a padded room, and I remember being in there, and the nurse came in, and he was taking an intake on me. And then he's like, "What are you dealing with?" And of course, I'm telling him all my OCD stuff. I still remember him. He's like this. He's like, yeah, I don't know what that is. Like I was like, yeah, I can tell. I can tell by your facial expressions. And I think I had a period from 2019, 20, 21, and a lot of 22 where if I slept 3 to 4 hours a night, if it was straight, which it never was, I was jumping for joy. So I wouldn't say my sleep issues were as bad as some other people, but they were bad. And it started too because when I was in grad school, because I'm a chiropractor by trade, I played very competitive video games for like 10 years. Sounds so nerdy saying it, but I did. And I would play because I had school 60 hours a week. And so I would play video games from like 8 p.m. at night till like 1 or 2 in the morning. And then I have to be at school by like 6:30. So like I was just exhausted, but I just didn't care because as you could probably tell, if the people don't know who I am, my energy is like this all the time. Like I've never struggled with energy, so I would tell myself I didn't need a lot of sleep, and then eventually it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and it was bad. I mean, it was it, I would. I can't even remember the last time I went to sleep for at least a 3 to 4 year period where I did not have like shotgun heart palpitations
Mm-hmm.
the entire night. If I woke up, you know how it goes too. If I did wake up, which never did happen, in calm, I
Mm-hmm.
would, oh my God, I want to hold on to that like a teddy bear in the storm or a child with their teddy bear in the storm, and then it wouldn't happen again for 9 more months. So it was a pretty wild journey, and you know how it is. We always just constantly feel like you're in that, like you wake up from a nap, but you're not really like there. Like that was my
Mm-hmm.
level of exhaustion for just years. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Thanks for sharing this, Nick. And
yeah.
just a question, like when you were struggling with your sleep, did you experience also the pressure to sleep?
Um. So this is interesting. I never had the pressure to sleep per se for me. What bothered me was because one of my biggest values, as we know, especially with OCD, OCD goes for what you value the most, like most disorders. And I valued operating at a high level in business, career, in my life. So I guess it wasn't a secondary indirect pressure, but I never thought like, oh my gosh, it was if I didn't sleep, I was more angry because I couldn't operate the way I wanted to in my day. I'd be in business meetings or I'd be in building a business with my wife or seeing patients or doing anything. And I just was so disconnected from the present moment, which that became a big problem, like trying to force the present moment, trying to force concentration, which insomnia people and OCD sufferers. There's so much similarities. People ask me, right, what's the difference between strictly insomnia or sleep insomnia, OCD? I'm like, it doesn't actually matter. The fears are the same. You know, whether it's mild OCD or chronic, whether it's a standard insomnia, or whether it's the fear of not sleeping with OCD, because that distinguish factor can set someone up for disaster. And so I always just knew that I didn't want to believe it. None of us do. I just could not accept for so many years that my belief systems and my behaviors were fueling this entire cycle. And I mean, today is a great example, right? It's 5:19 in the morning for me here. Most days I get up around 4 to 4:30 in the morning anyway. If I don't really get to bed until 10, the only thing that happens now is I look at the clock and I say, oh wow, I'm only going to sleep 6.5 hours tonight. And I go to sleep and wake up just fine. Nothing like it was as when you know how it goes. The clock is, you know, you're looking at it and you're like, you're like, oh my gosh, 6.5 hours. Oh my gosh, 5 hours and 34 minutes. And you're just checking the clock all night long. It's actually crazy how the human body can operate like that for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
totally
never
get
did that. I never put the pressure on myself. I know that's a big one with a lot of people I work with. But that's what's interesting about insomnia and sleep-related fears, because there's no cookie-cutter approach per se. Everyone's going to have a different reason. Some people are like, the only reason I need good sleep is I have to be able to take care of my 3 children because I'm a single mom. And then you have another guy I work with from a hedge fund in Manhattan who's like, no, I got to sleep because I make $8 million a year and my life is very like, I need to perform. So the underlying issue is the same, but there's different flavors to why their fear is latching.
Exactly. I totally agree. I totally agree with you. And in my perspective, I think what we are also like still talking about is still this kind of like, I must sleep. I have to sleep. Right. So essentially that's the pressure that I'm talking about. Now that pressure can be coming from different beliefs. Right. For someone it is performance. For others it's just realizing like, okay, I cannot afford to lose my job because I have so many responsibilities. Someone is afraid of their health, that it might deteriorate if they don't sleep, and all this kind of like beliefs that get installed in us, right? That creates so much struggle. We just simply don't feel okay with less than perfect night, and that kind of creates.
And social media has done us in badly with just, you know, I mean, it's like Disney movies, right? With our OCD in the OCD world, you know, people ask me, why do you think it's one of the bigger themes? I say because you've grown up with Disney movies that have fantasized love and romance subconsciously since you were a kid. Sleep is actually very similar to, you watch movies of people, you don't think about it this way, but they get out of bed and they're like this, and they like always are so happy, and they're not yawning. It's interesting how when people in movies, if you watch, a lot of people like jump out of bed and they're not yawning and they don't look tired. So you have this built-in perception for years of what sleep should look like. And it's really, it's dangerous. It's not no one's fault per se. You can't change that in society. All we can do is educate. But that underlying belief of, you know, my life should be this way, or I must feel a certain way. But I think one of the biggest questions people ask me about sleep is, what do you think is the biggest problem with it? And what I've noticed working with thousands of people with these variations now is this idea that there's it's like IBS. People believe with their stomach, there's like an optimal stomach feeling. Like you see people, they're like, that person probably has no gas, no stomach bubbles. Like it's it's like, no. And then sleep is the same way. There are people who they're on the bus, right? They're on public transportation. They're just looking at people and they're like, God, they look so alert. They look so awake. But you really just don't know, because someone like myself, for an example, who tends to be more hyperactive and eccentric, you could look at me and say, wow, that guy really looks like he's really lively. But inside I felt dead. So it's this idea that there's an optimal, I don't like that word, optimal like feeling of sleep. And that is just driving so much of insomnia processes because you're just honed in, as you know, the internal thermometer, which we use at OCD Recovery, coined by Rob. Once you have insomnia or the fear of getting insomnia or of not sleeping, you're just honed into how you're feeling all day long. It's an automatic process, and that's what people they miss on what we believe is they don't realize. They say, "How do I stop measuring my sleep?" Or I say, "When your fear comes down and your behaviors change," because that's very similar to, like I say, you've heard me say this in my content, and I love saying it to women because it makes the most sense. I say, imagine if I came up to you 2 days on your menstrual cycle and I said, "Turn your symptoms off." You'd look at me and be like, "This kid has no idea how the human body works," because your symptoms of your menstrual cycle go away where your hormones are balanced, which your hormones would be the beliefs and the behaviors. You can't just turn off your hormone symptoms until the cycle is over. And that's the same type of analogy for this. You can't turn off the extra tired sensations. You can't turn off that until your belief systems and until your behaviors have changed long term. You know, that's the hard part for people.
That makes total sense. I think yeah, like tiredness, how they show up to their days, like it's something that many people struggle with because there is this desire, like, okay, I have to always perform, I have to always be 100%, right?
Yes.
And then when we inquire into, okay, let's imagine a person who never had insomnia, who never had this kind of like fear around not sleeping, right? And then they are going to work every single day. Is it true that because they are sleeping well, their productivity levels are always the same, like always 100%?
Great point.
And then it's like we start seeing like, okay, actually that's not true. You can have like a perfect sleep by all the, golden standards,
Yep.
but you might feel very, very tired, exhausted, non-productive at all. And this is something that I find that it's helpful to start accepting this.
And not to cut you off, that's a great point because some of my most, now I don't think about it that way because I'm not afraid of feeling a certain way. So there's no internal measurement. But some of my, I guess I could think of a few days even this week, some of my more like energetic moments or days could have been when I had not the best sleep because it just happens naturally. It's, as I know you say, and a lot of other insomnia coaches and people that work in the research field, Beth being one of them, I know most people know Beth, is that like you have no control over that. None. It's a total loss of control. Like you will just be more energetic at times. Sometimes you won't. Some days it's wild. The other day I had really bad sleep. My dog woke me up a couple times and I think in total I might have slept 5 hours and then I went wired the entire day. No thinking of taking a nap. And then some days I'll get 7 hours like moderately straight and by 12 o'clock I'm just like, holy crap, like I'm going to take a 20-minute nap. And there's no judgment on that anymore. And that's the problem, right? Because especially with insomnia, that we could talk about naps for like 10 hours. People, should I nap? Should I not nap?
Yeah.
How long should I nap? Oh my God, if I nap too late. And obviously in our world, we have to give, which is very similar to yours as well, like I said, we do have to give set exposures at times, which freak people out, Because we've seen, obviously, you know how it goes. When someone's really extreme, even just like smelling coffee, they'll freak out, right? They're like, I can't have any caffeine. It's no. So let's say someone's having coffee, but they're not having it past noon. I'll say to them, for the next 2 days, I want you to have a large coffee at 7 p.m. And they freak out at me. So, of course, when you do this for a living, as you know, you have to be very understanding that I have to remind myself, imagine how you were 6 years ago. You were not happy. So, and all these little things. But the thing I think we should transition to next, because I know we talked about it before we turned the video on, is just how much bad information is on sleep hygiene.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a big one.
Sleep hygiene, and I understand if you've never had this, and you go on a big podcast like Joe Rogan, or you go on these big ones where people watch a lot, and you see a sleep expert talk about hygiene of sleep. They usually have a big fancy title behind their name. They sound very, how I can sound, they can sound very straightforward and confident in what they say. But if you dig beneath the surface, what they're doing is creating a lot more cons than pros. You're just teaching people to be scared of, like you said, this natural cycle. So I think if you were to ask me, what are the ones that we get the biggest kickback on, which I know you do too, is I'm like, look, there's never a need to use blue light blocking anything. I'm not saying there's not benefit. I'm not disagreeing with the physiological. But when you're recovered, it's minuscule. If it even, I just don't. It doesn't matter. It's like tinnitus, right? That's actually tinnitus started my OCD cycle. I woke up with ringing in my ears, and that kind of shot me towards the whole suffering. And people are like, well, it's good to use earphones when you go to music festivals, like I go to these big techno shows. I'm like, you're not wrong, but because I have no fear of hearing any ringing in my ears, I'm not saying what I'm doing is good for my ears, but I'm just not afraid of hearing sound, so I don't need them. And I'm not saying that blue light blocking glasses couldn't provide some benefit sleep, but if I take them away from you, you crumble. It's the
Yes.
house on stilts. You crumble. So
Dependence.
the blue light blocking glasses are, I always forget you have a blue light blocking like screen on your phone. I forget about that. So that one, another one, I know we get so much kickback on this, is melatonin. Again, I'm not again. I take melatonin 3 to 5 days a month now. But if when I was suffering and Rob said to me, "You got to go a whole year without melatonin to show yourself," you go not a week, a year. I was like, no problem. And he goes, eventually you can use it as needed. But I still have to be careful because if I took melatonin 5 to 10 milligrams every day for a month, I could probably feel that old cycle slightly start to kind of like slightly creep back in. We've experimented with this, like with my body dysmorphia. Rob was like, why don't you try to track certain aspects of your workout again? It's like an addict taking, a glass of beer and just doing this and
Hmm.
sniffing it. It's like, ooh, you're walking real close to the line in recovery, right? So the melatonin was the big one. And then the other third one is, these are all ones that people hate to hear, is like nighttime meditation rituals or like calming. Where they're like, yeah, but meditation puts me in a good sleep pattern. I'm like, yeah, but what if I take away your meditation? You don't just say this to me. You don't just say, wow, I really wish I was meditating. It's, oh, no, 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 no. If I don't meditate, then I can't sleep. And if I can't sleep, then blah, 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 blah. So it's like these things that you're holding onto so tightly.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, they're so hard to cover. You have to be so good how you use your tone or you phrase it and know who you're talking to. This is, if I'm talking to someone like myself from Jersey or New York City, I know I can like shoot the shit and be a little bit more aggressive. If I'm talking to someone from like an area of like Norway or Finland where like they're a little bit more, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's so true, a little bit more like pleasant, compared to you like New Yorker, how you doing? I have to be a little bit more soft in my approach because someone's not used to having someone like me who's like, oh my God, this is such a like New Jersey, New York American guy telling me I shouldn't take melatonin. Who does he think he is? And then they just get, so I have to say, hey, look, this is why, and I have to change my tone. And you have to try and contact the person emotionally because it's like going up to someone and saying to them, hey, did you know that your religion is wrong? Or did you know that having kids is bad when they have kids next to them? You're attacking something that they deeply value.
Yeah.
And then that is going to probably be met with some sort of resistance.
Yeah.
For you, what was the sleep hygiene that you fell into pretty badly yourself?
Well, for me, caffeine has had to go the first thing, right? And I realized like I completely rejected this thing that I love, that I drank before, and I didn't have any sleep problems, and now I cannot drink it, and I still sleep awfully. Like I still struggle, right? And I've been like this for several months until I realized like, okay, if I'm struggling, I might as well just allow myself drink this again because I love coffee.
Yes.
So that's when I realized, and actually, like after a while, I started like sleep started to show up easier, even though I was drinking coffee, right? The blue blocking thing. I didn't have glasses, but I had on iPhone you can set like your screen to be red, like it's
Yes.
kind of like
Oh,
black
yes.
and
I
red.
forgot about that.
That's something that was I really hated it, and I was like I started noticing that I'm actually avoiding any sort of like light exposure at night, right?
So, yeah.
That was triggering for me. I was constantly checking my phone to see the time, doing sleep math in my mind. Okay, what time is it until my wake up time?
I was terrible at that. Terrible. I checked my phone. Like, I would check my phone. I mean, sometimes I would check it. It seemed like every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I'd wake up and be like, just hit that button, right? Just, what time is it? What time is it?
Yes.
4:42, 4:49, 5:12. And I'm like, I got to put my phone on the other side of the room for a little bit because I'm so addicted to checking the time. And for me, I don't know how many people you work with. I know particularly I have this because of I must operate well at work. I was afraid of sleeping in. So, like, when I put my phone across the room, this is an angle that hit me. I was afraid I was going to miss my alarm, and it would derail my entire day. Oh my God, I have to be at the gym at 4:30 in the morning. If I'm not at the gym, I have all these obligations. I have this meeting, I have that meeting. I can't afford to sleep in. So instead of just accepting that if I sleep in and miss something, it's not the end of the world, I held the rigid structure so tightly. Where a mom might not have that because she says to herself, even if my alarm doesn't go off, my kids are going to wake me up, you know? But for me, I have no children, and it really, that scared me. So that's why there's so many flavors of this. But, I always forget about, because I didn't have that particular angle. Like, people say, so right now I have that huge, like, movie screen light. And I've had friends of mine be like, you stare at that light all day long. I'm like, bro, I don't even realize it's like, it's been there for years. Like, I'm literally directly looking at it. And I can have that on. It has no blue light setting. I can have that on until I do one-to-one sometimes with Australia and New Zealand late because of the time difference. So I'll have that on. It might be 8 o'clock at night, staring at it for 16 hours all day. Go have dinner and go right to sleep, no problem. Yeah. Where in the past, people would be like, well, a lot of people I work with are like, oh my God, I can't have that. That's the worst thing ever. Oh my gosh, how do you have the light? And they're not using their laptops in bed, right? Yeah. Can't have my laptop in my bed. Can't be on my phone at bed. And like you said, it's just like you live this life now where your entire existence is either trying to sleep or worrying about getting good sleep. And that's it. It's just a cycle. Just over and over.
And at some point it becomes so overwhelming or so restricting that sometimes like you can start actually seeing how ridiculous those rules are.
Yes.
Right? Like you surround yourself with all this kind of like greenhouse environment where nothing bothers your sleep. Nothing is supposed to kind of like, there is no sound because you're using earplugs. There is no external stressors. There is no blue light. There is no anything that could potentially disrupt your sleep. And then you get into bed and then your mind goes like, okay, now you have to sleep. Why is it that you're not sleeping?
Yes.
And so on and so forth. So it's like, I feel like there's this kind of like a curse of perfect sleep environment. Like when when we obtain optimal, as you say, sleeping conditions, that paradoxically can bring so much struggle to people because then they still feel like, oh my God, this isn't going the way I expected it to go.
Yeah, and they're never happy. They're never content with how they feel. And the big problem too is, especially in the OCD world, like when someone has OCD and they're coming in. Obviously, you and I both know Reassurance is a nightmare for us. So, but you can look at different angles where I tell people you can teeter the line of Reassurance, but if you cross over it, it's like you said, it's like standing in a bar when you're recovered from alcohol, but there's a difference between standing in a bar and then taking a shot of whiskey. Those are two separate things. And when you're looking at the perspectives of understandably why the sleep experts get this wrong, you have to look at how many, I always think about the best example is, there was no help for mental health after World War II. Zero. And these soldiers came back to every country, whether it was on the Allies or Axis side, it does not matter, and they had terrible PTSD. And they had PTSD until the day they died in their 90s. many of them, which means they had flash memories in their sleep, which means they didn't sleep well. And I always try to tell people this idea that if you don't get optimal sleep, like you're just going to like wither. I call it like you turn into Voldemort dust at the end of Harry Potter when he just like turns into dust. You think that's going to happen. You really do. But yes, of course, we have to accept that there is a possibility that your health will be in. I mean, obviously, you're not sleeping well. You're in a flight or flight state. Of course, your health is going to be at risk. But the idea that, there's no way you can live to an old age with bad sleep is simply incorrect. Because we see that. We see what happens with people. And if you take where I live in Colorado Springs, which is a massive military area in America. So I have lots of patients who are Vietnam veterans or Korea, and I love talking to them about this. They look at me because they have no mental health issues. They'll be like, well, not in the typical way. And I'll say to them, like, you sleep well? And they'll say, God, I haven't slept well in 50 years. They just say it so nonchalantly because they just realize that they don't, they're not thinking about it. They're not afraid of it as we are. So it's like the idea that there's these people, like we said, going back to the first one we talked about, that are just they're just waking up after 8 hours of blissful sleep and going about their day is probably so rare when you really think about it. OCD, insomnia, PTSD. Look at my wife. My wife is a great example. She has zero mental health issues at all. None. Very balanced. We always like to joke and say she learned how to be a human at the proper ages. Like she learned how to be 9 at 9. I had to learn how to be 12 when I was 30. Like I was like delayed. And there's plenty of nights where like our dog was sick last night, threw up again. She had to wake up. She has a business meeting very early on Thursday, so she was up at 4:30. And we didn't even get into bed until like 9:30 or 10. So, and there's days where I see it. She's like, I need a cup of coffee. She's like, I can't even keep my eyes open. But she's not locked into it. That's the difference. Yeah. And I think what we should transition now to, which is, I think is a great thing to talk about, is what recovery from this looks like.
Oh, yes.
That's a big question that people want to know. So it's like, this is what I always tell everyone. Because I'm not afraid of not sleeping and my musts and my beliefs have changed, I don't measure it. So there's no measuring going on. I'm aware in a healthy way. Trust me, when I go to that big electronic festival, Ultra in Miami, every year, the kids I go with, they like bring me back to my 20-year-old days. My buddy was messaging me and he's like, okay, we're going to go to Ultra till midnight and then we're going to go to a show till 3 a.m. I'm like, bro, I got to sleep at like 10. And he's like, I don't care. So when I sleep like 3 hours for 3 days in a row, when I'm standing at the festival the next day, I have to be like, I need a Rebel vodka. I need to wake up. But so it's like a healthy aware, but there's no internal panic. The other thing too is, this is what's cool. I can take a melatonin if I want, but there's like if you were like, use sleep blocking, blue light blocking glasses for 2 days, I could wear those and then take them off and never use them again. There's no pull. I'm not like, oh my gosh, but I just wouldn't use them. And I think the best benefit is the things you could do in life again. Like, imagine you came to visit America and you're like, hey, I want to go to this place, but it doesn't start until 11 p.m. I could be like, let's go. I'm not thinking, oh, come on, it's already so late. I can't do that. Like, I got to get up early and this and that. You could just say to yourself, I'm going to be tired tomorrow. And then you go and you have fun and you get lost in the moment. So it's the freeness of it. It's not that I don't feel tired at times. It's not that me, again, doing this at 5:42 in the morning, knowing I have a long day ahead of me. But I am not locked in to any fear at all. And that is very freeing. Yes. So what would you say for you? What are the benefits that you've seen with yourself?
Well, for me, I can actually like say exactly what you said, in the sense that I'm not afraid of basically making any decision. And I'm not, the way I usually describe it is that sleep kind of like is no longer in the decision-making process here. It's like, yes, if I need to to go somewhere, right? And I know that I'm going to, let's say, like I have to wake up really, really early. And then there is an opportunity for me to, let's say, go and, see a movie with a friend or something like in the evening, right? And from that place, I can make any decision without any fear. I can say, no, I don't want. I have a early, I need to get up and
Yep.
I just don't prefer it. It doesn't make sense to me. But I also can say, yes, sure, okay, whatever. Even if I, sleep just a few hours, and I will feel tired, I don't care. So for me that's how it feels, like very freeing. The same with melatonin. Sometimes I have like a muscle whatever, some tension and so on,
Yep.
and my
Yep.
husband, he's like very much into this kind of like supplements and all this kind of stuff, and he just usually gives me like, oh, here's this supplement, and then I realize like, okay, then I'm just going to like take that, and I don't attach any sort of like meaning to this.
Yes, that's a great, because we didn't even there's this again why it's so hard to cover every angle. Like again, guys, it's not like, and girls, melatonin is not the problem. It's how you're using the melatonin that's the problem, right? And then we can use it freely. The same thing with like GABA. People use GABA compulsively really badly. GABA's another big one. The supplement world is a multi-billion dollar industry that has people that like certain supplements will solve all your problems. That's the problem with the supplement world, right? They're like, take these supplements and you will just have no issues whatsoever at all. It's like, you got to be careful with that. And I think one thing that we should talk about a little bit too is whenever you watch anything about sleep or insomnia, take it with a grain of salt until you watch the whole thing and see what the angle. If the person's not talking, usually the person that you're listening to knows what they're talking about for two things. They had it and they came out the other side, not like anything. And number two, the things they're telling you to do, you're internally resisting. You're like, I don't want to do that. No, that can't be that. No. Are they crazy? Look at this guy and girl telling me to have coffee again. Coffee's bad for you. It's a stimulant, and I'm already not sleeping. Or it's like that just goes to show you. And there's a statement that we say at OCD Recovery that the man or woman who tries to live forever isn't living at all. So if you're trying to optimize your life in every angle, you're missing out on the beauty of life, which is spontaneity and doing things that you normally wouldn't do. And it's not about whether it's healthy or not. We're so obsessed with like perfect health outcomes. Like I will smoke cigars until the day I am dead. I love cigars. And I don't smoke them a lot. My wife hates the smell. So we met in the middle of once a week is fine. And my mom's like, but cigars are so bad for you. I'm like, yeah, but I think about this, right? Where I live at elevation 2,200 meters. That's how high in the air I live in Colorado. I hike to 4,000 meters. I work out 5 days a week. I eat healthy. That's enough for me. If I want to enjoy and get a little bit less sleep and have a cup of coffee, like you and your husband came to visit and we go to a nice restaurant and I'm having a cappuccino at 9 p.m. I'm telling you right now I am. And sure I might not sleep well, but it's like the loss of excitement in life is what you're getting back in insomnia and sleep fear recovery. You're getting to be to a place where you can finally say, like you said, you can make any decision. No, come on, like I went out 3 nights in a row. Like we did this last year at Ultra on Sunday. We were like, do we want to go out right now after partying for 5 days? And I'm like, bro, I'm going to fall asleep in the club. Like I will stand there and I'm going to do this. So he's like, let's go home and go to bed. But if he somehow dragged me out, which he's my best friend, so he's very convincing, and I'm very impressionable, I could have said, let's just go. I'll have a couple drinks and we go, and I'll go back and just go to sleep. It's a funny example using like going out and partying, but I mean, how many people with insomnia, if I said to them, you and I both know, hey, I'm coming to visit you. Where do you live? I live in Amsterdam. Oh my gosh, I've never seen Amsterdam. Let's go out. And then you're like, no, yeah, I'll tell you where to go, but like I'm not going to go with you. That is like the saddest part to me about any fear. Insomnia, standard OCD, PTSD. It's like your life just becomes boxed and
Yes.
boxed and boxed.
Yeah, it robs you of this of whole experience, whole palette of experiences that a human being can experience in their lifetime. And this is something that I usually kind of like say, like, when you start to realize how much your fear is costing you, really, like how much life it costs you, then the actually the decision to start facing your fears becomes easier. And I think
Right.
sometimes person needs to see, like, because it's not really, what I notice is that sometimes like people will push back on certain aspects, like let's say for example, we are discussing like coffee, like at night, right? It's not that we are saying like, oh yes, everyone should do this. It's more about like not to be afraid of that, like not to be
Yes.
afraid of situation where for whatever reason you need to have like a drink a coffee or whatever that is,
Yes.
right? And if there is still some sort of like attachment to this particular activity or belief that it's giving me something in return, maybe a sense of safety or whatever, right? It will be very difficult to let go. And that's why
Yes.
usually I never push people in terms of like, okay, if this doesn't make sense to you, perfect, explore other avenues, like what feels right
Totally.
to you.
And
But when it's
not to cut exactly that, right? It's like you have to look at the person, but like obviously, the unfortunate side is with us, again, like let's say someone has like standard OCD and they're just not sleeping. They don't have insomnia fears, they're just not sleeping. There are certain things that like our recommendations for what they would need to do for them specifically would be tough, right? In the beginning, like we have to teeter in, like we're like, look, you do need to probably have a couple cups of coffee at night because you are so scared of like your OCD taking over. And sleep is secondary. Your harm OCD is the primary problem. Sleep is secondary, and then tertiary is you hyper focused on why you're on the tired sensation. So, but what you said there is probably the most important thing for anyone in mental health to hear. Is what you said about like the freedom aspect of like, we're not saying you have to have a cup of coffee, but again, it goes back to, it's very sad. It's like you're out with your friends and they say to you, oh my gosh, I really want to go to this place. Did you know this coffee shop stays open until midnight? And you could be like, wow, I haven't had a cappuccino at 10 p.m. before. Let me try that. And they make like these really cool, like now they make like all the designs on the cream. You just shut yourself off from that entire experience. That will never happen for you until you change it. And I, just like you said, I got to a place to where I said, I need to just get comfortable with, it's already there. It's not going away anytime soon. So I might as well do something that will benefit me going forward by, having some coffee when I want, or going out with friends. And that's how I got to where I am today, recovered. And another thing to kind of end it on with me too, I never have slept well. Before this and after this. Like if I sleep 6 hours straight, it's like, oh, like the pearly gates have opened. It just doesn't really happen for me. It's just how I am. And I do a lot of this too. I know we as humans, we love doing this. I try to have rules for myself, and I am good with this. Last night was a great example. I got into bed and I was like, all right, you're going to read and then you can play the poker app on your phone. And so I read for like 10 pages because I love reading, and then I'll pull up the poker app. And those apps can be, that's why I don't like to do it every night. I'm like, I'll play for 15 minutes. Next thing you know, 30 minutes goes by, and I'm just staring at this blue light this close to my eyes. And people say to me, well, you probably would sleep better if you didn't do that. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to not do it because I like to live my life. Yeah. And I think that's the moral of the story is I'm going to live my life within balance and reason, teetering into what most people would say is unhealthy. It's like gluten. Oh, don't even get me started as an Italian from Jersey. I love when people are like this. Did you know that gluten-free tastes just like gluten? I'm like, are you out of your mind? Gluten is amazing. Gluten-free pasta tastes nothing like gluten pasta. And I'm not saying that gluten's the best thing for you, but if I want to go out and have a good penne vodka at an Italian restaurant, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to have all the gluten on earth. And it's like I want to live my life like that. And that's what insomnia, IBS recovery, headache recovery, vertigo recovery. There's so many things that it's not as structural as people think, you know? And then they realize, like, how sad is this? How many people with headaches or vertigo fears will stop driving, stop walking down the street because of all the perception? No way they're going on a roller coaster. No way they're going on a plane. No way they're traveling long distances. Some of them haven't seen their family in 10 years, or their family has to come to them. And the only way you break those down is by living your life with those sensations being there. It's the only way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
any final things that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I have actually two things, and this
Sure.
is something that I've noticed. Like many people ask this, and I've seen like many people have this fear of, like, let's say their struggle with insomnia, and let's say that this is their primary fear. This is what they like. This kind of like the, this mechanism of this control and this kind of like seeking security, like started with insomnia and fear of not sleeping, but then they also become very afraid of developing some other health issue, mental health issues. For example,
Totally.
like a lot of people are actually afraid of a combination between insomnia and then having OCD, for example,
Totally.
or
Yep.
combination of insomnia and developing depression or some anxiety disorder. Can you speak a little bit to that? Like,
Sure, yeah. So the comorbidity fears is huge, right? So take a big one is health OCD/insomnia. Oh my gosh, if I don't get good sleep, I'm going to develop some type of neurological condition because my nervous system is always jacked up. So this is where unconditional life acceptance is so important. So this is my biggest beef with the insomnia and primarily what we call the TMS and CRPS world, the pain world, which is a huge world that almost no one understands. I follow the top men and women that give advice on pain, and they're always telling people that they're safe. And I say to them, you don't know that. You're also not safe. You could die in a car accident tomorrow. So there's a difference between acceptance and not being safe. So like I tell people, you never will get certainty on whether you being exhausted from not sleeping is actually going to cause you something else. That's a possibility that you do need to accept. If you are up for 10 years straight, there's a very good chance you're going to have some other health issues. It's just physiology. You can't like knock your way out of that. Nobody wants to hear that. They're like, no, it's harmless. I'm just like what you said. No, you told me before with the PTSD people, they live till 90. It doesn't mean they didn't have gut issues or they didn't have more depersonalization. We don't know. We weren't inside their bodies. So you do have, step one is you do have to accept. Or else you're always, again, hyper aware. Oh my God, sleep this, sleep that. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. So that is something that needs deep unconditional life acceptance. But on top of that, even when you have acceptance, you still don't have certainty on that. So but you're not afraid of it. Like, I have no idea when I could, because of the way I like to live my life, it directly impact another health condition of mine. Like, there's no way to know. I have psoriasis. I've had psoriasis for almost 20 years now. It's usually my legs that are plaqued. I don't really get it too bad here unless it's flaring up. But my lack of sleep causes an autoimmune reaction in my body at times. But I'm not scared of that. It all comes down to fear, right? And it depends on how deep this goes, right? Because this is a very common one. If I don't sleep, I'll be depressed, and then I'm going to end my life. Insomnia to self-harm. If I can't sleep, I'll be depressed, I'll lose my job, I won't have an income, I'll be homeless. So it's like I have to dissect the belief systems at different parts when I'm working with people and looking at where some people have no care in the world about like losing control and self-harming themselves. That's not even on their radar. They're like, that's not my fear. My fear is depressed and I can't enjoy life. Not about taking my life, I just can't enjoy it. And then they have the insomnia and the lack of enjoyment, and they're like, I can't enjoy anything. And they're like running around like a maniac. So give me 1 second, because I could just text this guy. I have a one-to-one here in 3 minutes.
Oh
no, you're fine.
sorry.
Oh, you're totally good. This is how we roll. Okay. Calling in 13 minutes. Just finishing Just finishing this podcast. We're good.
Cool.
He's a cool guy.
No, but I just want to say, like, I really understand like what you're like saying here, because like for me, I also had to actually accept a lot of like things that I was afraid of. Like say, okay, if like whatever something happens and whatever, like one of these difficult fears that I had to kind of like accept and let myself like roll with it was this: I will never be sure that I will not experience a setback and any
Yes.
time in the future. Like,
Yes.
so I had to come to terms with the idea, like, you know what, if even if I get to experience setbacks, or we call him here like speed bumps, for the rest of my life, I can take it.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is that was like super hard for me to accept.
Yeah,
But
and this is why
over
it's so
time,
hard to cover so many angles in a single podcast, because you could have we could do like a 10-part series, one on speed bumps and relapses, one on sleep hygiene, one that had to actually break the beliefs down with the Ellis books,
oh,
like,
that's
like that right there is, in of itself, like, goal. I always like to talk from the person. My goal is to get comfortable with the sensation of loss of sleep and whatever outcomes that can give me. Irrational beliefs. I can't stand this. Can't happen. I must feel X, Y, Z. And then what happens is you have those A, activating event, plus your belief system equals your C, which is hyper awareness of extra exhaustion. You're measuring it automatically. You're so afraid. You're depressed. You're angry. So, and this is why, you get some people that have never struggled with anger at all, but then you get a lot of people who they're just so angry that they're not sleeping. They're just like straight pissed off. You get some people who are just strictly depressed and crying, and very emotionally charged up with like, my life is ruined. I can't do it. I can't do this. And then, you know, whatever it is that the person is dealing with, I think the ending message for me is there is hope, no matter what angle that you're coming from. I personally have never met a treatment-resistant fear of insomnia case. I haven't met it. I have just seen people who have bad behaviors / habits and poor belief systems. And now my dog is barking at me. This is how I get woken up in the middle of the night.
yeah.
I get
Yeah.
she'll just sit there on my bed. This used to drive me crazy. She'll sit there and literally just look at me and just go, oh, here comes my other one. So here's my wonderful wife. You want to say hi to the camera?
Sure.
Hi there. Yeah. So now we have like the whole family for
We got the whole thing. We got the dogs. Got Erica. You going right now? Okay, I love you. So,
Well,
but,
yeah.
yeah.
I think I don't want to hold you longer because you have a call, so I would wrap up here. But thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think your take on this is very kind of like a different, like unique. It's very like straightforward. I would describe it as also like tough love, and I
Yeah.
think many people are benefiting from this because in certain areas I would also definitely benefit from a little bit of this kind of like tough love approach.
The tough love is a little bit missing in other, like, it's cultural, right? I've worked with about 80 countries now. I've worked with every country in the EU. I've worked all over the Baltic countries, Russia, Middle East, everywhere over America, all these random islands. Like, I get people that come in, they're like, hey, I'm from here. And I have to be like, Google, where are you from? I'm like, you live here? I'm like, you live on like some postcard island, of like Greece. So it's a cultural thing, right? When someone comes in I had a girl that bought a 10-pack from Iraq. She's not going to respond the same way in the beginning that, like I said, someone from like Brooklyn is going to respond. Anyone that's listening to, a lot of people listening to this, they're not from America. It is as stereotypical as you say. New York and New Jersey, we really are like in your face. We tell it how it is, and it has benefits, but the tough love component is definitely missing in mental health. We speak to each other like babies, and that's really bad for us because we're not babies, we're adults. And when you say to someone, it's going to be okay, everything is okay, you could still be compassionate without having to speak to them like you're teaching them how to walk. Oh, come here, give me your hands. You're going to be okay. Because you actually don't know if you're going to be okay. I'll leave you guys with a great, scary story, okay? This is just what happens. We see people that come in for OCD recovery, They get better, 20s and 30 years old, so they're not that old. They get better. They go away for a couple years, and then they come back in, and they message us and say, I just got diagnosed with leukemia. So it's like, that person is going to have a lot of tough love. The doctor's going to be like, this is the radiation you need. This is the chemo you need. You need to train people for life, because I think people think tough love is synonymous with like ego or anger. Tough love, without tough love, you have to hear the reality of this. Hey, you're probably not going to sleep for a lot longer. You're not just going to like wake up tomorrow and be, most people are not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, this makes sense what they're talking about. And then just have this bliss state. Like, you're not going to believe what we say. You're going to have anger. You're going to have doubts. And so there's going to be this period of like where you need to repetitively hear, this isn't going to go the way you think it's going to go. Like, you'll get good sleep, and then you'll wake up. Now how it is, right? We get good sleep for a little bit. You wake up on a random Tuesday. You're like, oh, I feel great. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, the next week, all shit sleep. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just got good sleep. What the heck? So, and I tell everyone the same thing. If anyone's watching this and you're struggling with OCD specifically, and you have that combination, you know, I tell everyone to email the same person, like phil@ocdrecovery.com. We can help you. Because a lot of people have insomnia, but then they have harm OCD or POCD. And you need that specialized OCD touch, because when you have insomnia based in with like existential OCD, you have a lot more going on than just this, you know, and we can help those people with the primary OCD aspects of it. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate you having me on. I was very excited for this. I was looking forward to it. I love doing podcasts with people. It's
Thank you so much for coming. I will mention like the how people can find you in the description.
Appreciate it.
So anyone who is like interested in working with Nick or just checking out OCD recovery, you also guys have a YouTube channel with a lot of videos, a lot of content out there.
And we probably have more content. I would say our analytics between like TikTok, YouTube, the Reels, the WhatsApp groups, everything. I mean, we're putting out 100, 200 pieces of content a week minimum. I mean, it's like, we just crank. And I'll tell you, you want to talk about being bored and tired? There are a lot of times where I'm like, I don't want to make a YouTube video right now. Just turn the camera on and start speaking. Then you start speaking and you get into the mood of it. Trust me, when my alarm went off this morning at 4:40, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to get ready and get on this podcast. I was like, dragging a little bit. And a fun thing to end it on too is, you probably wouldn't know this, or maybe you heard it in the WhatsApp groups. So my wife does this big workout challenge from the 1st of January till March 16th called 75 Hard. It's a pretty big life program that people do. It's intense. Too intense for me, and with my body dysmorphia, I don't mess with it. But I've done 3 things with it. I've done no caffeine, no cigars, and no alcohol. So I haven't had any caffeine in, let's say the 20th, in 51 days. Okay. So, which is pretty impressive for me, as much as I love coffee. So not only did I have to wake up this morning at my normal time, I couldn't have a black cup of coffee, so I have my boring water here. So it just goes to show you that you can do something like this even when you're tired, which I feel more tired than I normally would because it's so early. So, but I appreciate you having me on. We'll definitely do this again for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nick, and have a nice day.
You too. Have a good one.
Bye. Bye.
See ya.